Hello, hello. I'm Ashley Reinhardt, and this is the first conversation with creative reuse professionals. Calling it Talking Trash with Ash, and I just am getting it started a little bit to get everything set up early. I'm going to send some invites to people. So while I'm setting that up, bear with me for a moment, please. Thank you. Yep, I'm really excited because I'm going to be talking to Rachel Weaver. Yep, and there she is. So I'm going to add her on and go live. Let's see if I can add while that's loading. Hi.
Hey,
Hello.
can
Thank
you
you
hear
for
me?
joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hopefully you can hear okay. I think I mentioned I'm having a little bit of internet issues, so I'm in the lobby and there's a lot of stuff going on. So hopefully it's
Oh yeah.
okay. Okay, good. Great. Well, I was sending some invites to people, but I think it sends it also automatically. So I don't want to waste your time. So I'm just going to get started. And then I figure I can always share this
Okay.
interview with other people. Because I just found out yesterday, we had someone who joined or had joined Instagram just to see these conversations. Like they'd never been on Instagram before, but they
Oh
got an
yeah.
account so that they watch these conversations. So it's really exciting. So that's what I'm hoping
Awesome.
is more people will hear about creative reuse. So
Awesome.
I think a lot of people who are watching this know something about creative reuse, but if there's any special little description you want to share with what you do, what creative reuse centers are. Um,
Yeah. Awesome. Can you hear me okay?
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Cool. Yeah. We like to call creative reuse. So reuse is, a lot of times thought of as repurposing or upcycling. It's using an item other than its maybe initial intention, or it's using it again. And then the creative reuse aspect is adding creativity to that. So either adding a creative element to the reuse of that item or using that item in a creative way to create something new or do a DIY project or to make a new piece of art. And so that's what we like to think of for creative reuse. And creative reuse centers are kind of the spaces that provide the community to get involved with that. So at Scrap Creative Reuse, people can donate materials to us. We're an open to the public creative reuse center. And then staff and volunteers organize those materials. And then the public can come in and shop the supplies and try to find things. And then our centers also offer different volunteer programs and educational programs and kind of different stuff depending on the community and who's there. Some shops have offered sewing machine repair because they had someone who knew how to do that. Some have offered, all the different workshops will kind of depend on different educators we have involved. So it's really great to see all the different ways that the community can get involved with creative reuse.
Great. And I realized I jumped the gun and I didn't do the icebreaker questions. So
Oh,
these
it's
are
okay.
silly little icebreaker questions. So I'm just going to
Yeah.
get them started. Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Coffee. Yeah, me too. Morning or night person?
Morning.
Morning. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I know. It's weird. It's weird.
Usually, like, yeah, creative people. What's your favorite musician or band?
Oh, that's hard.
That you are a musician as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I like to play music. A lot of my friends are musicians. So I really love just seeing what my community creates and my friends and supporting them. But I generally like kind of like music that involves keyboards and kind of more like that, like technological equipment, sort of like, I love stuff from like 80s music. And I really also like Brian Eno stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, studied music in college, and
Cool.
I'm a too, but I studied Philip Glass and Brian Eno and
Oh yeah.
Terry Riley. So, what
Yes.
about you like Stereolab, the band?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great. Oh, and like huge discography. Yeah.
About them just when I was DJing, and I had a
Cool.
college, so it wasn't anything major. It was just little. But anyway, okay, back to
Fun.
you. What's your favorite book?
Oh, I can read a lot of nonfiction, but I got this really great new piece of fiction at the beginning of this year. It's called The First Sister, and it's the first of a trilogy of this new author, and it's great. It's like sci-fi, um, future world building. It's great, and so that was like the fiction I read this year that I just couldn't put down. And now I'm waiting for the second one to come out at the end of summer. I'm like, come on,
That's
give me
always, I love it when like you're reading it and they're putting it out while in real
yeah,
time, and so you're waiting. Yeah.
yeah. I was like, okay,
Um,
I'll reread it before the second one comes out, and then
right. Ocean. Last question. Ocean or mountains?
oh, that's hard.
It's all right. You can say both. Right. I'm the same way.
Yeah,
I like both. So
yeah,
hard to choose. Um,
yeah. Right now, I'm feeling ocean.
yeah.
Right now.
And you're in Denton, Texas. Yes.
Yeah,
You're in
that's where I
Denton.
am. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm originally from Dallas, so
Oh wow, yeah.
I know a little bit about the area. So, do you know? So, how is Scrap Creative Reuse? Is that the only reuse center in Denton? And like, how do you have relationships with other reuse centers nearby in North Texas? Like, how bustling is the reuse scene in northern Texas?
Right. Yeah. So I am in Denton, and um, there was a Scrap Denton that I managed up to 2020. So we are a part of a network organization of Scrap Creative Reuse Centers. The headquarters and like the flagship is in Portland, and then we have locations in Ann Arbor, Baltimore, and Richmond, Virginia. So Scrap Denton was sort of a part of that, and then I sort of joined. Unfortunately, Scrap Denton had to close last year, just due to COVID, and I was able to kind of stick with the organization and kind of come into an administrative role. But reuse in North Texas is Scrap Denton. Up until kind of 2020, we have been the only open to the public creative reuse center. There is another one in Fort Worth called the Wellman Project, and they were initially primarily for teachers and educators, but I believe that they've begun opening up to the public. And then I was talking with some friends in Dallas who they manage a nonprofit studio and artist residency space, and they're kind of tapping into the creative reuse aspect, kind of folding that into their project. And then some of the former Scrap Denton people started a new creative reuse center in Denton. So we've got a community that, and definitely art. Yeah, we've got a community that's really passionate about it. I'd say for how big the DFW Metroplex is, we don't have, Scrap Denton was the biggest up until kind of 2020 shifted things around. But I think that the community is really passionate about it. We would have people come over from an hour away, or a lot of the surrounding kind of smaller towns would come into Denton and like spend a whole day there because they traveled, all the way to get there. And then Austin has Austin Creative Reuse, which has been a long-standing creative reuse center, and I believe Houston has Art Asylum. So the major cities all kind of have a little bit, but we want to make that bigger and stronger, like Texas likes to do.
Right. Yeah, no, that's exciting because I'm hoping that as I'm sharing this with networks, I have a lot of contacts and old coworkers and things in Dallas and northern Texas. So it's
cool.
good know about what you're doing since you're local. Um, so my next question is how long have you been involved with creative reuse, and how did you get
Yeah.
interested in creative reuse?
Yeah, I've probably been doing creative reuse in my own way for probably a decade of just, I mean, and of course, just kind of growing up, like reusing stuff. I was always getting clothes handed down and, learning reuse in that way, but really creative reuse focused, I think, just in the last like decade of really folding it into my own sort of creative processes. And then got really involved with the creative reuse centers around 2018, 2019, while I was learning about scrap, and found that in my community, and started shopping there and started getting involved. And then in 2019 I was hired there and started working really closely with it. So I'd worked with other nonprofit organizations that sort of partnered with scrap or creative reuse, and because it's a great affordable resource. So there had been kind of these connections building before I got really heavily involved.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my other questions was what organizations do you do collaborations with other organizations, and then also your relationships with like the local schools and things. I imagine you
Yeah.
probably do a lot with schools as well. So
Yeah, and that varies a lot with the different sites. So we do have a give back program, and so organizations and educators can apply to get basically store credit to get materials for if they had a fundraising event, or if they were doing something that they wanted creative reuse materials for. And so I think that a lot of partnerships are definitely with other sort of community-minded organizations that partner with Scrap because they want to incorporate like a fun, creative activity, or they want access to some affordable materials to, decorate for an event, or but I think a lot of times it's kind of activity-based, like wanting materials so that people can kind of do something, make something at an event. And then school partnerships are great. The Scrap in Ann Arbor has a long-standing relationship with sort of just child education. And so we've been getting a lot of interest from schools to even just do virtual talks and send them materials to do a craft with them. So that's been really exciting to see. So I think each community's got like a little bit different kind of, and in Denton, we had a really great kids program, and then our adult education program was also really robust. And so, and I see that in the Richmond store, they've got a lot of sort of adult education interest, folks that want to learn how to do a new craft, or maybe it's about like fixing their own jewelry. Maybe it's about like mending things. And so that's nice too, to teach like sustainable skills that people can learn.
yeah, I'm surprised at so many people that are like don't know how to fix like a little like necklace chain or something, like
Oh
adding
yeah.
something. So it's funny, like if you do that a lot, you don't realize how many people might need that extra help.
Exactly. Yeah.
And along with collaborations, has there been a collaboration that you've had that you've been surprised, like that didn't seem, that they would fit together necessarily with scrap, but it surprised you at all, or not?
I'm sure. Yeah. And I'm trying to think of my kind of personal experiences. I was always really, I felt a lot of like joy whenever a community group would reach out to us that did some kind of community service or social service for people. That was
Right.
always really fulfilling, when like those organizations, we would collaborate with them and find a way to kind of reach out to their service community, and like really provide this unique opportunity for people in all different situations to kind of just enjoy some crafting and learn about this resource that they can find materials at. So I feel like that those were always the really fulfilling ones, is when when you feel like the arts and crafts supplies or the office supplies is like helping to do a social good. I think that's what we all get a lot of joy from.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, art therapy is a
Yeah.
thing, and I feel like a lot of people have been turning to crafting during quarantine and stuff to
Yeah.
also to pass the time. Meanwhile, while I'm talking, I've noticed that several folks have joined off and on
Awesome.
from various creative reuse centers, and so I invite any of those folks, if you're watching live and you have questions, to go ahead and if you'd like to ask questions, and we can
Yeah.
have Rachel answer them if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
So let me see. So what do you do day to day as director of education, right, and community?
Yeah.
Yeah, go.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said before, like now I'm more in an administrative role. So I
Right,
communicate with all the different sites and kind of, you know, the hope is that it helps make their day to day a little bit easier because they're focused on the site and, you know, the taking in donations and processing things and dealing and, you know, working with customers. And so, you know, the hope is that we can kind of help on the computer side to like keep some of that business stuff organized and make that a little bit less of a task for them. And then as director of education, it's really great to you know, be trying to think of ways to connect with communities again, kind of build back up our programming as we see how things change in these coming months, how things kind of adjust, how we kind of find our footing again. You know, we switched to some online stuff and virtual education, and so it's kind of continued building that up. And then I also help with kind of building up how can we offer creative reuse center services and advice and consulting to other people interested in starting these in their communities. So we're really trying to build up some of these additional ways to educate people, both kids and families and our customers and our volunteers and people who want, yeah, to see creative reuse grow. So my day to day can be just as varied as some of the people in the store, because I know I remember that in the stores, you know, you're trying to do one thing. Maybe I was trying to like type up a press release or something, and then I'm helping cover register, or then we get a big 100-pound donation and we just need extra hands to like sort things. So I think creative reuse positions are great for people who like to have a lot of things going on and kind of, you know, we all just talk about how we're all balancing spinning plates. And so I think there's a bit of that, but we're people who, you know, we see how it's all connected to our mission and that excites us for it.
right. You mentioned that you're starting some more online offerings. Do you want to talk a little bit about specifics, like what you're offering
Oh yeah.
for
Yeah.
virtual?
Thanks. Yeah. So we just kind of picked back up launching our virtual Scrap at School and teacher training opportunities. These were programs we had before, but now we're trying to offer kind of in a virtual way just to kind of get back out there and, like I said, kind of build back up the education programs. And that's seen a great response so far, as we try to kind of balance it. We were doing private workshops, just kind of general private virtual workshops, and I just started getting a lot of requests from schools, and so I was like, okay, we need to like make it like this so that they have that information.
Right.
Yeah, so it's been kind of seeing what people
Great.
want. Yeah. And then the other side of that is, right, trying to tap into people who, you know, want to figure out what it takes to get creative reuse in their community, whether that's another scrap or it's starting their own or it's folding it into an organization and they want to add that as just an extra arm of their mission, like that art studio in Dallas is kind of doing. And so we want to be able to offer, because you know, not only kind of the people who are doing administrative tasks, but we have just a wealth of knowledge from all of the staff members and our board members who can help in a variety of ways, because we think it's just important that creative reuse is a resource for people. Every home, school, and community should have access to something like that. And you can get used to it when you do have it in your community. And then if you're lacking it, you're like, where am I supposed to get that stuff? Where do I get that little bit of paint that I need?
Right.
Yeah.
I want to be mindful of time because I told you 20 minutes. So just let me
Okay.
know if it's too far. But one of my questions was going to be, what would you recommend to folks who are thinking of opening a creative reuse center? And it sounds like Scrap is just a great resource in general, that someone, if they're thinking about it, could contact you or contact somebody at Scrap to figure out how to open their own if they're interested.
Right.
Is that
Right.
fair to say?
Yes,
great.
yeah. So we have a forum on our website, scrapcreativereuse.org, and we're building that up. We want to have it ready soon this summer, and just getting people the idea of what is creative reuse, and then what is a creative reuse center, and what are the kind of basics that you would need to get started. Just generally, like you want to have some kind of sort of base of people that like it oftentimes it's a very passionate individual who wants to see that in their community, and so it's really helpful if you've got some people kind of backing you up that will help with other things and volunteer some of their time to help. So that's always good to kind of have. In some communities you have to first teach people what creative reuse is, and so sometimes it's it's seeing what does your community already do for accessing materials like that. What are other reuse options that you have in your community, and how would that sort of connect with a creative reuse center? But I think that so much of this is driven from passionate people that if you have that, you got a really good start, because it's
Right.
knowing that you're wanting to do something helpful for your community and the environment, and foster that importance of creativity.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. So I guess what would be one of the items that people most donate to creative reuse? Your creative, because I know it's different in every
Definitely.
but what do you have a lot of to offer to somebody who would
come? I like this question. Yeah. And these aren't well, we get a lot of National Geographics, which those are great, and that's one of my favorite things to get at creative reuse centers. I have my own archive of National Geographics at home. That's been that way for probably 10 years. I would just get boxes people would drop off to me. I think we get a lot of office supplies because of the way that those materials change. But those are also things that kids and schools need a lot of too. And so that's good. And then we probably get more fabric patterns than we would like. I think there's a lot of excess fabric patterns, and
right.
it's not always the most purchased item, and you can't sell them for very much. It's,
right.
So I feel like most stores are always just like, we have too many of these, and you get duplicates, and Yeah.
What would be one thing that you wish that people would donate more of?
Yeah, I mean, good quality vintage stuff is always really exciting to see.
Vintage jewelry or
jewelry, even postcards, like old family photos and stuff, that a lot of people will digitize those, and then they don't want to just throw them in the dumpster.
Right.
People love finding old like vintage photographs that they can incorporate into their collages or art and stuff like that.
Right.
I think that's a fun one. Decent working sewing machines, because Scrap will sell them at a pretty reduced price, and that's a really good one. And especially people who want to get started into mending clothing or sewing projects, it can be a big, scary investment of a brand new machine versus like kind of learning how to do it on a used machine, and that can be helpful. Another item that's good, I think, if you just barely use something, it's always nice when like you know, an artist's notebook or some really nice paint has only barely been used. That's really nice because then it's still so marked down, but it's going to sell quick and the person getting it has a lot of it. And it, you know, so that those are always nice to get when we get a lot of almost new, basically art supplies. I think the art kind of painting and charcoal and some of the art supplies stuff, that is the stuff that like it goes the quickest. And then when you get a donation, you want to process it the quickest because
Right.
it's kind of a constant flow of those materials.
Brand new, it can be very pricey, so it's good.
Yeah.
I actually went to an art creative reuse center in Boulder, Colorado once and got like a whole set of pastels that were
Nice.
barely used, but it was
Yes.
so much better. So I was like,
Yeah.
yes, score.
Exactly.
Has anything, and then I'm still mindful of time, so just a couple more questions if that's okay.
That's fine.
Um,
Yeah.
so has there been anything that surprised you about working in creative reuse centers or in the field?
Yeah. I think it's once you've been on the inside, sort of either volunteering or working, you realize how much work and time and dedication it takes to processing donations. So I think that you realize, you know, you really look at pretty much every individual piece. You know, it's really nice when people organize their donations really well. Maybe you have like a whole bag of a specific item, and so that's really easy for staff to sort. But oftentimes we look through every, you know, individual donation and sort those materials and make sure it's not just, you know, it's not bad, it's not, you know, eventually everything kind of becomes trash. And so, you know, we're trying to look at things to where it's like, oh, this is still great, this is still usable or reusable. But every once in a while you get something where it's just like, oh, or it's a, you know, a bottle of dried paint. So it's like, well, okay, that's just not going to make it to the floor. So I think when you walk in as a customer, you don't always realize that, you know, these things have all been kind of looked at and processed in that individual way.
Yeah, I just know from, I make artwork and jewelry and stuff from old jewelry, and just going through bags and bags, that's like takes up the most time.
Yeah.
Is going through everything and just sorting, like looking at every piece and inspecting it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Exactly.
so I can only imagine what it must with like all different types of things because jewelry's
Yeah.
enough for me. Let's see. So I guess let's see. Are there any other places that you like to shop reuse in North Texas? Like, are there favorite? Because part of what the Trash to Treasure page is trying to do is get people more aware and normalize more buying reuse, like buying reused clothes or, you know.
Yeah.
So like for me, I would go to Goodwill all the time, but
Yeah.
are there places in, you know, specific to you? And it doesn't even have to be in person. It can be online as well. Are there resources or stores that you feel are like eco-conscious,
Yeah.
would like to talk about at all? Or
Yeah. In Denton, so the Creative Reuse Center that was started by some former scrap creative reuse staff is called Thistle Creative Reuse. And I've worked with all those people, so I love that they're doing it, and I'm really excited to see that. There was a new project I saw open up here in Denton called the Salvage Shop, and it's like a thrift store, clothing store, and like eco-conscious goods, like different bags and masks and accessories and stuff like that. And then we have this awesome group that Scrap would collaborate with prior, and it's they're called the Revamp, and they do you know, it's been on pause, but when they were doing events, it would be these like pop-up sort of events at different venues around town, and it would be clothing swaps. So you could bring a bag and there would be people who process them, and then they would have all these great clothes out there, and you would just pay like $10 or $20 to fill a bag, and it's all like nice quality stuff. And they would have music and vendors and other stuff. So that was always a great group. I believe they're still going to be doing stuff, especially when things can come back.
Right.
Um,
That's amazing. It makes
yeah,
me want, oh, I want something like that around where I am.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So
I,
yeah, those are the good ones I'm keeping my eye on here.
yeah, because it's amazing. I just had been doing a little research, and then I watched a webinar from the Resource Depot in West
Yeah.
Palm, Florida, where they talked all about clothing and how much of a,
Mhm.
like, a pollutant it can be,
Yeah.
how it's such a big source of waste. So
Yeah. Hmm.
I didn't had I mean I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't
Right.
have the idea about the scope. So
Yeah.
okay. Well, so one last question: how can people, especially in your community nearby, local community, but even from afar, how can they support your organization? What are some easy ways they can support you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just shopping at a scrap creative reuse is super helpful, and donating to them. If your donation's well organized, you will literally make someone's whole day. Uh, so those are great ways, and just it's helping us all kind of think about how we can incorporate reuse and creative reuse into our daily lives. So we definitely hope to inspire people to think about all the different ways they could reuse something. So I think in all of our communities, we benefit from becoming a little bit more aware. So many of these environmental issues, especially that deal with waste and or how we dispose of things that we personally are done with.
Right.
And so I think that as we think about how it's not just disappearing when you put it out of your, out of sight, out of mind. I think that, that power that creative reuse centers have to remind people to think about the whole life cycle of these items. So for my community, I hope to continue advocating for that. And then at all the communities where there are scrap creative reuse or other creative reuse centers, I feel like we all, that's what I love about the creative reuse collaborations, is that it's not competitive, because we all
Right.
just want to see that these things have a second life or a third life, or and that they get used to their fullest in a creative way. So I love that, like, all the creative reuse centers and the people I meet that are connected to creative reuse centers have that same passion, that it's about, reducing our waste and turning trash to treasure. So it's about that shared passion.
Right. And oh, made me think of one thing. Oh, I imagine too, you might need, maybe after things are a little more stabilized with COVID, but you might need more volunteers to help you go
Oh
through all.
yeah. Oh yeah, always. Yes, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah,
It's
volunteers are such an important aspect to creative reuse centers. Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
And if someone was is thinking, watching this, and they're not local, like my friend Rachel, I love you too, Rachel, just commented, um,
Awesome.
from Dallas. We're both from Dallas, but she lives in San Francisco now. So
Mhm.
watching this, she's like, well, I can't go and shop there. Do they? I'm not
Mhm.
putting Rachel on the spot by any means, but using her as an example. Are there people? Is there a way to donate money to help you on your
Yes.
site? Or okay,
Yes, so we are, as a nonprofit, where we can accept monetary donations that are tax deductible. You can donate to a specific site, or you can donate to the organization in general. And we make sure, like, if money's donated to a particular site, like it goes towards their goals and their budget. So yeah, volunteering time is really important. And we've had people reach out that offer us help with graphic design, or stuff like that. So even if you're not physically helping in the store, which is also really helpful and important if you're nearby a reuse center, but there's all sorts of ways people can volunteer for nonprofits that
right.
nonprofits can benefit from. And then, yeah, monetary donations are very helpful. We have very lean budgets, as all reuse centers and many nonprofits do. So.
Right, right. And that's amazing. That I really like that scrap, because when I first started reaching out to creative reuse centers, I'm like, hey, scrap keeps repeating. Oh, like that's really a nice, I don't know what the right word is, to have that network, because it
Mm-hmm.
is hard. I used to work in nonprofit, and it is so competitive, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm glad that there's this nationwide collaboration that's
Exactly.
special.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so very
Thank
much.
you, Ashley.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
I did. Thank you.
I did. I learned a lot, and I'm actually going to post your website, and if you'd like me to post your contact info, I will. If not,
Sure.
but I will post your info, so if someone's watching this from, that wants to reach out to you, they can. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
all right. Oh, Rachel's. You have a new volunteer.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're busy, so I really appreciate your time, and thank you
Oh,
so
thanks.
much for being my
Thank you.
first.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see more, more
And
friends. Yeah.
the link, I'm gonna put it on YouTube and other places as well. So
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Ashley.
bye.
Bye.